If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
And we're back. I've got my good friend Wayne Brown from Aggressor Adventures with us tonight. Good to see you, Wayne.
Yeah, good to see you, Chris. Thanks for asking me, and I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And our friend Pilgrim James from Pilgrim Ammunition.
Thanks, Chris.
Did you wash your beard or something? It looked like it shrunk a bit.
No, man, I just had to tape it in a bit, just thought I'd give it a bit of love.
Those are fighting words with him, by the way. Don't ever pick on the beard. All right. So tonight's topic, we're going to discuss the abomination known as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Although there's a couple other definitions for it. Wayne, I don't know if you heard this or not, but Tom Holman from Border 911, he was the first one who quoted it. He said, actually, DEI stands for deport every illegal. As soon as he said that, I thought, you know what? I am on board with DEI now.
I've not heard that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, the other one, of course, is didn't earn it. But anyway, we're going to jump in here pretty quickly. Just want to mention that if our viewers, if you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, you can download the brief if you are a paying member tonight. It's a 44-page brief. And once we get over about 30 pages, the amount of time that goes into it, we kind of set those aside for paying insiders, $9.99 a month. If it's 30 or less pages, then we make it available to all members. But tonight, again, is just for paying members. Sponsors for tonight include CCW Safe, Sawyer Products, Native Hydrate, and Flex Industries, which makes badass triggers. So, Wayne, I don't want to do you any injustice. It's been a while since I had you on. I'm going to pull up your website here and give us a shameless plug for Aggressor Adventures.
We offer over 40 destinations around the world, scuba diving, river cruises, safari lodges, signature lodges, and birding adventures for those that might be into birding. And I bought the company I was a customer back in 2005, thought it was an excellent company. Ended up buying in 2007. It had 6 destinations at that time. So I've grown it tremendously since then. It's been a love of my life. I've had other businesses I've grown and sold for over $100 million, but this one has just been a pleasure to have. And to the topic today, I couldn't have grown it from when I bought it to today without putting the right people in the right place.
Yeah, so just so our audience gets some perspective here, Wayne had many hundreds of restaurants that he sold and was officially retired, but bought Aggressor Adventures, came out of retirement, and like the rest of us who are entrepreneurs, he worked 7 days a week. But I should add that you have yachts that sleep, say, 20 people plus the crew, and it's all white collar service, 5-star service. Cindy and I were looking at your cruise down the Nile, and with the smaller yachts being able to get into some ports that the big yachts can't get into. I haven't checked the pricing lately. I'm sure with Biden inflation, it's gone up. But last time I checked, it was like $2,500 for the week for a couple. I just wanted to throw that out there because the price is incredibly reasonable, especially for what you try to.
We price based on, the currency and the local country. So we're not trying to gouge people if they happen to be from the U.S. and charge them in U.S. dollars just because we can. So, for instance, the one you mentioned, the Nile River cruise in Egypt, our dollar's pretty strong over there. So, $2,500 for 2 people for a week, cruising down the Nile, seeing all the cultural aspects of ancient Egypt is just amazing and more worth than anybody could imagine once they get there and experience it.
And it includes all their food and drinks and everything for the week.
Absolutely, including free beer and wine if you're into that.
It's an amazing deal. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So it's funny, we're already defining DEI before we got going here, but I like this one. Didn't earn it because it's typically the case in many instances. But I'm going to bring this one up here, and I want to mention quickly the Supreme Court ruling last year with regards to entrance requirements or entrance criteria at high-end universities. And essentially what SCOTUS said was that these institutions of higher learning cannot base admission on skin color or whatever race somebody is. And there were some people initially who thought that maybe it would give the business world a pass, but that's not the case. And there's been clarification from SCOTUS saying, doesn't matter if this is a post-secondary education or private business, you can't hire people, you can't promote people just based on their skin color. And I would argue, and we're going to discuss it, that what we have in many instances with DEI is sanctioned racism against white guys, just to put a blunt point on it. But the first part that I brought up here, Wayne, that I'd like you to comment on, because it's in your wheelhouse as a diver and owning a company that has all kinds of diving expeditions. The CEO of this company, his name was Stockton Rush. So OceanGate, this is the submarine that was on its way down to check out the Titanic, and it imploded on the way down, and it imploded for a whole bunch of reasons, especially the fact that it wasn't spherical. When they made it cylindrical like this, you get uneven pressures at depth, which is why they're normally a sphere. But he was very, very vocal against hiring white guys. Here's the quote: "I didn't want to hire any boring 50-year-old white guys to design the submersible. They're not inspirational and bring nothing new to the table." So essentially what he ended up with is a DEI type situation where not only did they know it was failing before it blew up, they fudged a bunch of paperwork so that they weren't shut down as far as their ability to pass certain tests. So I'm going to pause there and get your input, Wayne, on these guys in particular, this one example.
Yeah. So what I read, of course, that was very interesting to me, but with the industry I'm in. So what I read in multiple places was that, he refused to have it inspected or tested. We operate yachts all over the world, some very sophisticated countries, some very not so sophisticated from a inspection and a requirement standpoint. But regardless of what the country requires, we have our own set of requirements that we're going to make sure we adhere to, because we have, customers that rely on us to be safe every week, just as he did. He was taking customers down there. So for him to say, "Oh, I don't want to have it tested or inspected. I'm going to rely on, my staff to tell me that it's good enough," was just crazy to me. I can't imagine me ever, telling my customers, "Yeah, I built this yacht and I think it's going to be okay. So, have fun."
Right. Yeah. It's a pretty glaring example of what happens when you hire based on something other than merit. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term yet or not, Wayne, but there's a bunch of corporations now that are pivoting to MEI. So merit, excellence, and intelligence. And that's the way we've always operated in the past. And, if you're going to be the best, you got to hire the best. You know that. I mean, very successful businessman. James, I'll pivot to you next here on this. What are your thoughts on, like, this cost a bunch of people their lives by him being married to this ideology that we're all equal? We're not all equal, right? I mean, women are better at certain things than men are better at other things. To say we're all equal is a fallacy.
Well, mate, I mean, it goes back. It made me think straight away of when I had the oil and gas manpower business in Singapore, and we'd hire project managers to build, semi-submersibles, submersibles, a whole lot of, and it's not recreational diving. It's more, oil and gas diving, and it's not always 50-year-old white guys. Okay, they've got a team. They've got a project manager that makes the calls and manages the team, and they've usually got a whole lot of young guys that they rely on for, and in some cases women. I've seen women on these teams in Singapore, and they're relying on the innovation or thinking outside the box. And most of these older white guys, they're not really stifling. Innovation. They tend to embrace it, but they also know what has worked and what hasn't worked. So the safety is there. So, this thing of, just the first thing of, I didn't hire 50-year-old white guys because they're not inspirational. I mean, it's just a nonsense. It's just he's looking for a headline to tick the box, obviously. And when you're talking about something that is going that far underwater, there's a lot that can go wrong when the pressures are that are, the pressures on the hull and whatnot are that vast. uh, a lot can go wrong. That's why they get paid what they get paid. So, why they would danger somebody's lives just to tick a box is ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't disagree. As you can see on this article here, I highlighted it where they skimped on safety inspection. So every chance that they had to get an inspection done, they came up with excuses why they couldn't do it on this day or that day. But there's documentation of multiple failures on these subs before they got to, the Titanic depth, for example. And I'm not talking on that one dive, I'm talking on multiple dives beforehand. But I will say, when you mentioned, checking the DEI box, and I'm sure Wayne and you are both aware of this, basically the biggest money players in the world. So whether it be the IMF, the Rockefellers, even the WEF has their, tentacles into all kinds of banks and financial institutions. A lot of large corporations have very little liquidity, and they need liquidity so that they can make payroll, so they can pay their electric bill and everything else that goes with it. So when it comes to lending money and the interest rates on lending that money, if you do DEI, that increases your ESG score, environmental social guidance score. As your ESG score goes up, which means you're more woke, essentially, it means the interest rate to borrow that money goes down. So Target's a great example of a company for many years has had very poor liquidity and needs to run lines of credit for various units inside their business. And if they push all the alphabet stuff out front and they celebrate it for, 180 out of 365 days of the year, that basically drives the cost of borrowing down. You function at a very high level, Wayne. Speak to, if you don't mind, just give me your insight on larger corporations having to run lines of credit for liquidity, because it sounds counterintuitive when they're that big, but it's not uncommon.
No, it's not. And let me first address this whole carbon offset, which is how it started.
Yeah.
10 plus years ago. I had a couple of people operating in the space and realm that I'm operating in around the world in the tourist industry, and started touting that they were doing all these carbon offsets, to help the environment, and Wayne, owning the biggest adventure company in the world, wasn't doing anything. And, and so I had reporters and journalists calling me, and I said, absolutely, I'm not doing carbon offsets. That makes no sense. Why would I, keep spending money on diesel fuel and burning as much as I can and just buy more trees down in the Amazon? That makes no sense. Let me work on how I can reduce my fuel consumption, how I can burn cleaner fuel, and reduce, my carbon footprint in a realistic and, and a feasible way. So, I mean, it was a big, back then it was a big push for all these carbon offsets, which obviously went away because everybody realized it was just a shell game.
Yeah.
And to have, they need the capital because, capital expense today is crazy expensive. I mean, we have to save for years and years in order to build a new vessel, just because of the expense it costs to get through all the regulations and hurdles and permits just to even start construction. So it's very, cash, capital is very, very cash intensive practice for every large corporation today. And, and until they start pushing back like they have recently on all these programs that aren't doing anything for their productivity and the longevity of the company, to make sure they don't end up being a Kmart and a Kodak. I'm glad to see it's kind of swinging back to reality.
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. 10 years ago, the climate alarmists told us that in 10 years that the polar ice caps would be gone, and they're actually larger now than they were 10 years ago. And I mean, at my age, your age, we've heard this for many years. The world's going to end in 10 years. And, whether it be Al Gore from back in the late 80s, early 90s to what's her name? The young girl from Sweden or Switzerland, she's actually gone and deleted a bunch of her posts on X because 7-8 years ago, she said the earth will be done in 5 years. The whole thing's going to be done. And, you look at things like the sea level at the Plymouth Rock in the 1800s, and you look at it today, nothing's changed. And with the ice thing, like if you take a glass and you fill it with water and you put ice in it and the water level's just below the top, when the ice melts, it doesn't overflow. You know what I mean? Like it's been a lot of baloney on this stuff, but anyway, I digress. Go ahead, Wayne.
Well, I'm hoping that one of the benefits of this electronic age we're in, and instant news cycles, and internet, and X, and Facebook, and TikTok, and all these sites, is that we're now able to get our news through enough sources where we can filter through what is the truth and what is not, so that we can make proper decisions for businesses, for our family, for our life, for everything we're doing going forward. Because before, we were fed by 3 major channels, and pretty much what they said was what we had to accept. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I'm glad today that we have a lot more multiple outlets to filter through and kind of figure out where we really are in the world.
I mean, we're a little bit off path here, but I would say that the legacy media is comparable to horse and buggy guys in 1905, and that their business model is done. It's not going to carry the day. Nobody believes them because they've been carrying water for the globalists for years. And it's the mockingbird media. That's my number one litmus test. If I see all the major networks saying the exact same thing, that will encourage me to go and dig deeper, because, follow the money, you usually find out where it leads to. But anyway, back to the subject at hand, the DEI. So this article here actually speaks to the safety inspections and, how they didn't just skimp on them. They postponed them and canceled them, even though technically they shouldn't have been allowed to do that. So this is a post that was made on Twitter 3 years before the sub blew up and disappeared to the bottom of the ocean. And these are the women of OceanGate. They are submersible pilots, data analysts, business managers, engineering, project managers, marketers, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that any of these women are not intelligent, but they were hired, and you can go look it up from Stockton, the guy who was the CEO. They were hired because they were women. And like he said previously, he did not want stuffy 50-year-old white guys, which I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, as a business owner and entrepreneur, and I'll kick this one to you next, James, I don't give a shit if somebody is purple, green, yellow, black, white, whatever. My interest is making sure that our bills are paid, our employees get paid, and that there's something left over at the end of that. So I'm going to hire the best person for the job, regardless of all the other stuff. But your thoughts, James?
Well, mate, I mean, with what I've been building, my time here, and what I've had to build in the past, business wise, it just puts a spanner in the works if you've got to, fill a box, and most investors, like particularly your VCs, not particularly high net worths. Your high net worths want to see, okay, how much do you need and how long are they going to take to get it back with the ROI? Okay, they're not really interested in ticking a box, but most of them want to see it inside your SWOT analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that goes into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but to fill that box is really going to stifle a lot of companies trying to kick off, particularly startups or people that are looking to scale. Okay, because scale, they know what works, and they just want the best person for the job. Otherwise, the scaling can get pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's it's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. And I think that the way that the landscape is going now, that it's something that's going to be pulled back, and it's just going to be the right person for the right job, regardless of gender, where they're from, whatever. Whoever's the best person for the job, and if it's a white guy, it's a white guy. If it's a black chick, it's a black chick. But there's other things that go into hiring the right people, and it comes down to company culture, and comes down to whether there's going to be no problems in the workplace. So I did a study, some time ago when Musk started talking about these robots, and thought, okay, that's going to solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. So this is the last article I have specific to the suburb. No, yeah, it's the last one. And it's a fairly long article, and I don't want to read the article, but anybody who goes and gets the brief, there's a link to this article. This one in particular is really good at covering the mistakes that were made, the mistakes that were swept under the carpet. And even though these things were being pointed out to the CEO, he kept falling back to the same thing. I'm not hiring middle-aged white guys. And again, 5 people lost their lives as a result of that. So I'm going to go to the next post here. And I'm not even sure who this guy is. I follow him for a while on X. But I'm just going to read through this quickly and then get your comments on it, Wayne. So after the most recent post in my timeline before this one, I want to make some things clear. DEI is racism. DEI is anti-white racism. It's misandry too, but that's a separate issue. I believe that the most pernicious effect of DEI and really its primary purpose is that it was intended to not only discriminate against whites, but it was also intended to make whites feel that it is okay as a matter of self-defense to say racist things like America is for white people, not brown people. Thus, the real purpose of DEI is to encourage race division and race hatred along all racial lines after we had almost eliminated racism in the USA pre-Obama. Democrats achieve and maintain power by creating racial divisions. Don't fall for it. I understand how it feels to want to defend yourself against racism by being racist in return, but more racism is not the answer. The only solution is for all Americans, regardless of their skin color, to reject all forms of racism. And even if you're a victim of racism yourself, to not adopt racist attitudes in response. That is the only way we heal that, and defeating DEI in all of its forms. So, Wayne, I'd love to hear your perspective on his assertion.
So, I've never associated DEI with racism. I've associated it more with the deserve versus earn attitude that kids come out of college with. When I'm hiring and interviewing younger kids just out of college, or they're on their second job or looking for the second job, a lot of them are like, I deserved a promotion, I deserved a raise in my last job, and I didn't get it. Well, and I'm very frank with them that nobody deserves anything in my company. Everybody earns something. So if you earn it, I'm happy to give it to you. I'm also going to hire based on the needs for each position I have. So if you fit those needs, and James mentioned culture, that's a big part of it. If I can't put somebody that might be well qualified but doesn't click with our culture in there, because if they clash with everybody every day, then nobody's going to get any work done. Yeah. And so culture does play a part into it. But I've always equated DEI with unfortunately this mentality that we've have uncovered coming, I think, mainly from colleges, that we see that college professors telling kids that they deserve something rather than they should earn it, and so it was never a DEI was never a program that was going to last. It's just not. It's just going to implode on itself, because there's no way companies in the long term can survive and strive in that environment.
Well, and a great example, and we've got some articles pulled up on it, is Boeing. So Boeing went all in on DEI, and they ended up collapsing their entire DEI department not too long ago, a couple months ago. And the reason they did that is because their planes have been failing on a regular basis. And in the past 3 days, there have been 3 planes that either crashed or had to make emergency landings that are Boeing. Boeing are the only ones in the airline industry who've really gone full tilt into the DEI stuff, and they've sacrificed safety, just like this guy with the submarines sacrificed safety. So normally I would go to James next, but I'll go to James after the next one. I just want to get your comments on this, Wayne. So this was Coca-Cola put this pitch deck out to their employees, and the headline says it all. Basically urged their workers to be less white. And of course it got out and people put up a fuss over it, rightfully so. And point is that it's very racist. Here's what they're asking of their employees. To be less white is to be less oppressive, less arrogant, less certain, less defensive, less ignorant, more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, break with white solidarity. I mean, it's
so in that instance, Chris, I mean, that's just blatant racism. I mean, I hate to ever use that word, and I rarely do, but in this case, if I had an employee come to me that said, "Hey, I want to pitch this program to our staff," I'd have no choice but to fire him, because I mean, it's just crazy that anybody would come up with that, thinking that it's a great idea for any company to help bring people together and be more productive. It's just unbelievable.
It is, and I'm pretty sure that I've got some additional tabs coming up that are actually more offensive than this is, as far as being, against white people. But I'll go to you next, James. What I want to do is this is a short video. It's a minute and 25 seconds. I want to play this because this is with regards to NASA's DEI stuff and how they discourage their employees from the white supremacy culture.
And in doing this work of examining my own intentions and my own actions and their impact, I can see that there's so much more that I could have done to make the projects I've led equally welcoming to Black, Indigenous, and people of color as the white people they have engaged. I feel a lot of shame and regret about that. And I know that without looking head on at what I've done and not done, I won't be able to do better. So I'm looking forward to today's event and to this whole series as steps in my personal and professional journey to make my work more anti-racist and therefore more effective in reaching my aspiration.
And this may be a review for many of you, but these are the...
Okay, check this out, James. White supremacy culture, perfectionism, fear of open conflict, quantity over quality, defensiveness, progress is bigger, more, paternalism, worship of the written word. I mean, they're going after Christians here. Right to comfort, power hoarding, either or thinking, having a sense of urgency, individualism, objectivity, and a couple back there that I can't see. So just quickly as an anecdote here, there's a company called Caliper Corp, and they are by far and away the preeminent leaders when it comes to assessing people before you hire them. You can also use it to assess people after you hire them. So what it basically does, it's like, the Myers-Briggs test on steroids. And some of the stuff is extremely objective, like intelligence levels, but other stuff is more personality related. Does the person work well on their own? Do they take external direction well? Sense of urgency. There's like 100 criteria. Sense of urgency is the number one criteria for people who are in executive roles, like a VP of sales, director of sales, those sort of things. If you don't have a sense of urgency, you're not going to do very well selling. So James, I'll let you comment on the stuff that's on the screen. Then Wayne, I'm going to leave it up because I want to hear your thoughts specifically on sense of urgency. How can you call that racist? That's how we succeed. But James, you can go first.
Well, man, I mean, a lot of the things like perfectionism, a lot of these things I would want in most employees. I mean, worship of the written word, that says to me, it doesn't automatically go to, religion to me. It goes down to somebody who is into their documentation and following what the documentation is, which is what you need in building teams, particularly, in the startups. This is just ridiculous. But it's a big part of the culture. I met a couple of people when I was over in LA, just at the back end of COVID, that were working for SpaceX, and they were all very woke, and didn't want to speak to anybody if they were white and male. I mean, if you look back at history, and I hope I'm not going too off topic, but in the 80s, when like skinhead gangs started to become rampant, it was a result of black gangs kicking the shit out of people, so they needed to stick together. The same effect could happen with invoking bad culture in organizations, when people should be just concentrating on what their work is, and stop worrying about what color you are, and what you do in your spare time, just who's the best at doing their job.
Yeah. Merit. Wayne, your thoughts on these points on the slide?
I've seen several of these presentations in the news, Chris, where people, want to make up for their family, their ancestors, because they feel guilty about it, which I've never agreed with. I'm going to treat everybody the same. I'm going to treat them based on how they treat other people, based on their integrity and their honesty. So I'm not going to apologize for any of my ancestors or anybody else's ancestors. I mean, what's done is done. You can't go back and redo it. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So let's, go forward and treat everybody, with like you would, you want to be treated, and let's move on. That's how we're going to move the needle to get past all this racism and DEI that unfortunately has swung the needle to a lot of companies in the last decade.
So I've got a couple studies that we're going to put up here shortly, but one of the side effects of this is creating resentment. And there's several studies that have proven that those companies who have been, big adopters of DEI have created a bigger chasm than there was beforehand because of the resentment factor. But both of you mentioned the word culture. Let me give you an interesting take on this. So I've got two friends. They're identical twin brothers, Damien and DeArmond Becton. And they're two of the best dressed guys I've ever met in my entire life. And I met them because they were giving a speech at a chamber luncheon. This is years ago. And they got up and said, we were taught to dress up and speak properly as youngins. And when they went to school, they would get beat up almost on a daily basis because they didn't look like the other kids. They wore nice clothes. They wore ties. They spoke proper English, blah, 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 blah. And all I'm getting at is that the cultural aspect, let me give you a tangible example, Wayne, and then you can comment on it. So I had a business partner who was a pilot in the Vietnam War and ended up a executive VP at IBM, and he managed a $5 billion a year global consulting practice. His name's John Sharman. He reported directly into Sam Palacimo, the CEO. And they came into his office this one time and said, hey, whatever this big customer was is really pissed off because of the guy that you put on the account. And John's like, I have 1,000 VPs reporting into me. I don't know the specifics. What are you talking about? So one of his VPs hired this guy. He was a black guy who spoke perfect English, had all the credentials. It was all good stuff. And then when he was sent out to do consulting on this business, on this customer's, premises, he reverted to speaking in Ebonics, and the customer flipped their wig and were like, why are you sending us people like this? You're IBM. Like, you guys are one of the biggest in the world. Can you not, send, more qualified people that speak proper English? Long story short is John Sharman ended up firing the VP and the guy because they lost the account because of what they sent in there. I mean, this stuff all matters.
Well, I'm the last person you should ask about speaking proper English, because I'm being raised in the South most of my life. I know that I'm very Southern, sound Southern. To me, I've always tried to, when it comes to hiring, look at the skill sets they have. I'm not that worried if I have plenty of foreign nationals obviously working for me that some of them speak great English, some speak some English. I don't really care. If they have the skill set to fill that position, that's fine. So in that case, I don't know enough about it. It could be that company, was at fault for making a quick judgment on somebody that might not have spoke good English. So that's a case that we could debate for hours and hours. But to me, it's goes back to, again, are you being hired for the skill set you have for the position that you're being hired for, and you can be productive and earn your right to higher raises and to promotions.
Yeah, good answer. So next one up here, this is the first of a couple slides on Boeing. This just happened yesterday, as you can see, December 29th. So this is another Boeing jet that failed. At the time they said the death count was 120, but it's actually 148, but there's 28 people they can't identify because they were burned so badly. But I'll play the video. It's a short one. It's 14 seconds.
들어온 제보에 따르면 비행기는 착륙 중에 랜딩 기어가 내려오지 않았고 착륙한 뒤 활주로를 이탈해 공항 담장 잭까지가 폭발했다고 합니다. 다시 한번 전해드리겠습니다. 오늘 오전 9시 10분쯤.
I mean, that's just brutal.
Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and Lord only knows what's going to come out of that for lawsuit. So, James, you're a world traveler. I mean, how much confidence do you have in flying Boeing these days? Because I know people who specifically won't fly on a flight that's a Boeing plane right now until this stuff works its way out. I think you're on mute, James.
Sorry, mate.
No problem.
I don't think it's just Boeing. I think it's the companies themselves that have to maintain the crafts. The maintenance schedule is, I don't think is always done by Boeing. It's done by Boeing certified techs. But yeah, I mean, it's, it's flabbergasting because I mean we're going into a lot of evidence on why this stuff is just bad, but and not to get off topic, but I mean it's DEI, the way that it's being DEI, I think it was instigated for inclusion. And the way that it's being done now with this, woke, so it's just misguided and really ineffective. And it's the other side of it is, and I think this is something that you may be going in with later on down the track, is that it's really going to hurt race relations, okay, in companies. And, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't really know what to say beyond that, mate. I mean, when you're talking about things as important as submersibles and planes, a lot of things can go wrong. And it's not just the people that are traveling; it's the people on the ground as well, particularly with planes. So, I'm glad that I'm, getting citizenship in your lovely country and not having to travel back home to Australia too often.
And so this guy here wants to know what was it called before DEI when the only folks being hired were WASPs? It's called meritocracy. You hire the people who have the most merit, excellence, and intelligence. That's what it was. No successful company can succeed hiring on skin color. So you have to hire the most qualified, the most meritorious person, the most, intelligent person. And that's what it's called. There's a reason that businesses who've been very successful have been very focused on hiring based on merit. It's not complicated. It's not white people didn't get the job because they were white. They got the job because they were the most qualified person for it. You also have to think in years gone by when I grew up, and which is a little bit after Wayne, but not much, 90% of America was Caucasian when I grew up. So then you would expect to see 90% of the workforce comprised of whatever the demographic makeup is, right? It's like the government official in Ireland who's Muslim from somewhere in the Middle East was freaking out because all of the Irish bureaucracy were white people and 99% of Ireland is white. And people said, well, You know, what do you expect? If 99% of the people are white, 99% of the workforce is going to be white. It's got nothing to do with skin color or race. Anyway, moving on from there. I did to highlight this as far as Musk saying, you want to fly in an airplane, pardon me, where they prioritize DEI hiring over your safety. That is actually happening. And it's happened more so with Boeing than any other company. And I have to assume, James, that they probably have badged employees and contractors like you're mentioning. Most of these large corporations that engage in DEI force it upon their suppliers. So in other words, contractors don't get the subcontracts and the jobs unless they adhere to the same DEI baloney. So anyway, moving on from there, this article here speaks to why Boeing just killed DEI, and they killed DEI because of all the things we've discussed here. If you go download the brief, then you can read more into that. Next one up, this is kind of a long video with Mark Anderson here, and Elon endorsed it. I probably won't play the whole 3 minutes and 31 seconds, but I'll play a good part of it.
Well, so if you wanted to pick like the most extreme possible like attorney to put in charge of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department to sort of reverse DEI, it would be this lawyer named Harmeet Dillon, who's been a California lawyer who's been, the scourge of woke corporations for the last decade. As it happens, she has just been appointed to run the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. And for the people who don't track this, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is the federal government, basically prosecutorial arm that basically enforces basically wokeness. They're the ones that basically have made sure for the last decade that all these companies have all these crazy policies that are penalty being investigated, subpoenaed, ultimately prosecuted. And by the way, there have been lots of prosecutions, lots of court cases. The most famous case that the current head of the Civil Rights Division brought was the case against SpaceX for not hiring enough refugees, right? Notwithstanding that SpaceX is a military contractor and is not permitted to hire non-American citizens under a.
So I'm going to stop it there and get your comments, Wayne. So did you catch that with SpaceX?
Yeah.
The government's going after them because they don't have a diverse workforce and they haven't hired immigrants, but they're not allowed to hire anybody who's not here lawfully in the first place with either a green card or a visa.
Yeah, I had read that back when, I don't know, months ago, I guess, when all that kind of came to light. And, each time every new president comes in and starts appointing their cabinet, I try to go out and read as much as I can about them. So when Harmeet was promoted asked to be the civil rights lawyer in the Justice Department, I went and you hear a name all out there, but you never really dig into them until you are interested in trying to figure out what their background is. And certainly seems like she is very qualified to be in that department and to make sure that there's nothing adverse going on out there in the hiring world, and no matter which way the pendulum swings, that we're getting the right people out there and that the right people are not being passed over.
James, do you want to weigh in on this before we move on?
No, I mean, I think Wayne said it pretty much, hit it all on the head. I mean, this is, I'm just going to be repeating myself from everything. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Fair enough.
And I mean, the only thing that I would add is if you looked at, if you've ever seen the I think it's the Prime Minister or the President of Poland, okay, that copped out a lot of shit from the EU because he was not letting in any immigrants and he wasn't taking in engineers. Yes, we've got them, and this is why we've never had a terrorist threat. Because we're not just letting people blindly into the country. So I mean, there's a lot to be said for just trying to tick a box.
Yeah, fair enough. So Costco's been in the news quite a bit recently for DEI, and their board of directors has doubled down on DEI processes, but the shareholders have voted against that. So here's just a quick snippet of the papers filed by the shareholders. With 310,000 employees, Costco likely has at least 200,000 employees who are potentially victims of this type of illegal discrimination. And remember, it's illegal because of what SCOTUS ruled. You can't hire or promote people based on their skin color. So type of illegal discrimination because they're white, Asian, male, or straight. Accordingly, even if only a fraction of those employees were to file suit and only some of those prove successful, The cost to Costco could be tens of billions of dollars. Shareholders request that the board conduct an evaluation and publish a report omitting proprietary and privileged information on the risks of the company maintaining its current DEI roles, policy, and goals. So, hypothetical situation, Wayne. Let's say that you hired, say, 6 white people and no black people when you were building out a new yacht and you're staffing it, so on and so forth. Would those 6 people in your instance, you wouldn't care whether they're white or black, right? I mean, that's a kind of a given. Okay. So what would the criteria be, for example, when you're staffing a new yacht? What are you looking for?
First off, they have to have the qualifications. So in my case, each of my yachts, whether it's a captain, engineer, second captain, first mate, or deckhand, they have to meet minimum requirements, not only from government regulations where we operate, but our own higher regulations internally for safety and customer service. Second, we look at we give them examples. So if a customer was upset or something happened, a customer's equipment broke or a customer got sick, how would you handle it? Because at the end of the day, we're in the customer service business. So, we got to make sure that, they understand that they're in the customer service business and they're going to do everything they can to take care of that customer and make them happy. So those are the basic qualifications we look for. And once they get past that, then we, it's usually a pretty narrow, number that we have at that point, to choose from. But at that point, it's who's going to be the best, fitting in with long-term, with our company. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I will tell you that of my years and years and years in businesses, for people that I separate people that walk on water and ones that are good swimmers. And what I mean by that is if I have people that are very well qualified, understand their role and are happy doing that role, they're good swimmers. If I have people that are, very qualified, understand their role, and they're looking for their next step up, those are people that walk on water. And unfortunately, they're not going to be around very long. And so I'm going to invest all this money and time in training them. And in a year, they're gone. So, I'm looking for people that understand their role, when I start narrowing down, who to hire, and look for people that are going to be happy for at least a couple of years in that role for all the money I'm going to put into them. Before then I look at them earning a step up.
Yeah. And for anybody who's not an entrepreneur, not everybody, but most people are not aware of what the actual burden is in dollars and cents. So just arbitrary numbers. If you were to pay somebody $50,000 a year, your actual cost for that employee is closer to $85,000, $90,000 a year with the burden. So your contributions towards 401ks, health insurance, which you're required to do by law now, that you have to kick in a certain percentage. And so it's not the $40,000, $50,000 a year. It's almost double when you put the burden on these days.
That's
and
right.
You have to match Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, this video here is a little bit further information on Costco and their DEI stuff. It's 5 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole video. I'll probably only play about a minute or so, but it gives you some of the talking points from the other side.
DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. These 3 principles are essential in creating a workplace that values every individual. It is important for businesses today to embrace DEI because it fosters a more innovative and productive environment. Diversity means having people from different backgrounds. This includes different races, ethnicities, cultures, and perspectives. It also encompasses different genders, religions, and abilities, ensuring a rich mix of experiences and viewpoints. Equity means making sure everyone has a fair chance to succeed. This involves providing the necessary
I just want to add a quick editorial comment. Part of the problem with the left woke progressives is they conflate equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. They are not the same thing. And they're trying to force equality of outcome when That's not fair to the people who've worked harder. Maybe they're more skilled, they have more experience, whatever the case may be. But that one specific thing is what makes people like me rebel against DEI. When you want to that's socialism, it's communism, right? We're going to dictate the same outcome for everybody.
Resources and support tailored to individual needs. Inclusion means making sure everyone feels welcome and respected. It's about creating an environment where everyone can contribute and feel valued. DEI is important for businesses because it brings new ideas and perspectives, driving innovation and growth. It also helps businesses understand and connect with different customers, enhancing customer satisfaction and loyalty. When everyone feels included, they are more engaged and motivated, leading to better teamwork and collaboration. This can lead to more success for the company, as a happy and inclusive workplace often results in higher productivity and employee retention.
All right, so we'll stop there. So, James, you're a pretty smart guy, you're educated. Every time I hear somebody like that promote the concepts of DEI, they speak in very nebulous terms, very subjective terms, not objective terms. Like, it increases innovation. Okay, well, if you're going to make a statement like that, how do you back that up? How do you quantify it? How do you qualify it? And how do you come at it from a subject or objective position instead of subjective? I mean, did you hear anything in that video at all that wasn't pie in the sky, nebulous, subjective comments?
Brings me back to, as you know, I left high school at 15 and I only got educated late in the game, 2015, 2016. And this was starting to really kick off then. Okay. And it's not diversity, it's not inclusion and it's not innovation. It's not innovation. It's not to do that. It's just to make the woke people see that you've got a different shade, a different this, a different that, okay, instead of just a whole lot of white guys. It's got nothing to do with what's best for the company. And it's not inclusion, okay, because, you've got, I've seen it in some of the visits that I've done with companies around the place. There's some good people out there that, are, of a different shade and they just want to work hard and they hate this stuff. They absolutely hate it. Because they know that they've got people that they work with, and sometimes in dangerous situations. Oil rigs. If they've got somebody who's just ticking the box, okay. If you're a roughneck, okay, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're that close to the pipe. And if you've got a guy who's not switched on that's there to fill a diversity box, I mean, you could end up dead. There's a lot of things that can go wrong on the drill floor. It's funny on how it's 2016 I finished my MBA and it's really hitting 10 years later and people are just trying to tick the box. And I think that you look at what happened with that beer company that went really, really woke and then just put out an ad recently where they're really coming back to where their core is. Some companies are starting to go back to where it is and just, not market woke and not just employ, to fill a DEI quota. Costco, they're a pretty big company. Okay, they think this is important. I think it'll come back to bite them in the ass. But is it going to be a problem for them? I don't think so. It's for startup companies if they've got to, particularly when you come into capital raising, if you've got to fill a DEI quota, okay, you need to have everybody on your game when you're a startup. So if you're filling a DEI quota because your VC is demanding it, it could be make or break the company. That's my opinion anyway. So it's scary.
Absolutely. Just a couple quick comments before we move on to this next article. Number one, if you look hard enough, you can find at least one instance a day of a female law enforcement officer who was on patrol by herself that ended up in the hospital because she was overpowered by a bad guy. And in New York City, for example, it's not just once a day, it's many times per day. And you can find countless examples of that. So again, we're talking equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. They're not the same thing. So when you drop the requirements, for example, to be an officer, and you're 120 pounds soaking wet, and you go up against some guy who's 250, 300 pounds. I've mentioned this on Survival Dispatch multiple times. I hate watching the undercard when we go to the HBO boxing in Vegas and stuff, because you get these two guys that are 120 to 150 pounds. They swat each other in the face for 12 rounds, but they don't have enough snot behind them to knock the other guy out. It's the same thing. A 120-pound girl, even though Netflix has created this false world where the 120-pound girl, beats up the 250-pound guy, that's just not reality, So I just wanted to put that out there as an example of DEI stuff creeping in and actually putting people's lives in danger. The next thing I would say is that as similarities increase between parties, gravitational force increases. That could be business to business, business to consumer, husband and wife, friends, whatever the case may be. And I won't go deep down that rabbit hole, but it's somewhere where I actually have a fair bit of experience with. Sun brought in this world famous psychologist years ago, and I want to say there was 50 of us in our group, and she conducted a DISC assessment with exercises on it. And her intention was to show how diversity was a good thing and not a bad thing, but it blew up in her face. So DISC assessments are based on 70% of your behavior, they say, is genetic, 30% is adapted behavior to your environment, right? So what they did is they said, okay, all the D's go over here, all the I's here, S's there, C's here, and we want you to build the hotel of the future. And so they gave us like a flipboard, and we got about 15 minutes into it, and this doctor comes along. She says, okay, I want you two to leave that group and go to this group, and I want you to go to that group. It was an hour-long exercise, and every 15 minutes she was shuffling people around. And when she got to the end, she said, okay, I want everybody in the room who was moved away from your original group, put your arm up in the air. So there was, I don't know, maybe 20 out of the 50 people got moved. And then she went one by one through those 20 people and said, what was your experience when you were with your group versus when you got moved to other groups? And without missing a beat, every single person, they were, maybe different words, but the same intention. They said, when I was in my group with my people, they listened to me, and it was very collaborative in nature. When I went to the other group, they didn't want to listen to what I had to say, and I got kind of froze out, and I wasn't part of the conversation. And again, her strategy was she was going to say how it's important that we mix people up, have diversity of thought and stuff, and it blew up, and it was the exact opposite result. And there's an ancient Greek saying from about 3000 BC where there's two Greek philosophers speaking to each other, and that it basically is the pot always finds its lid. And they say that actually evolved to 1000 AD in Slovakia, where they had this saying that said, birds of a feather. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's not birds of a feather fly together. That actually didn't happen to the 1500s. But that simple little adage is very, very accurate. It's why you see when people go to San Francisco, there's Chinatown. You go to New York, there's Little Italy. People gravitate to other people that they have things in common with. So when you mix a whole bunch of people up with different values, different belief systems, different levels of skills, I would argue it doesn't create innovation. It actually harms it. So I'll get off of my high horse on that one. This is something, in particular that bothers me about this stuff. Anyway, this article here, this is one of 3 where the conclusion is diversity, equity, inclusion training simply doesn't work. This is the startling verdict recently reached, not by opponents of diversity training, but by Mazrin Benaji, a world-renowned pioneer of research into so-called implicit bias. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, Benaji argues that the typical DEI training doesn't educate people about bias and may even do harm. And somewhere in this article, it speaks to how multiple people he interviewed during this process in different companies with different DEI programs, that the resentment was very significant. And this article here speaks to the same thing again, so I won't dig too deep in it. Again, it's in the brief if you want to download today's sit rep. And it's in this one, and Elon even speaks to it in this one on how it causes resentment and division amongst people. So Wayne, just a general question for you. If you had your dithers and you had a day off, would you rather go to the range with James and go shooting, or would you rather go to the range and go shooting with somebody who's woke, a woke progressive person?
Well, I'd love to go to the range with James, especially if I get some free ammo, because that would be a bonus. But if we've seen some obviously some safety issues at ranges, over the decades, where people have been injured and killed because people out there are untrained and injure somebody. So it's no difference in business. None of us create a business so we can run a daycare. We spend our money and our time away from our families to run a business as a business. And we're not, when we put the right people in there or we get rid of the wrong people, we're not being ruthless. We're being realistic.
Yeah, well said. James, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, it's yeah, we're echoing what we've said right from the start. I mean, particularly when you come down to things like, firearms, okay, law enforcement and things like that, ticking a DEI box is dangerous. Okay. And, it doesn't come down to just, race or anything like that. I mean, there was a shooting here with the police up in Tampa where, you two officers were shooting at each other from across each other. Now they hit the perp, but I think one of them got hit, if I recall correctly. That was about a year ago. I mean, those two guys should have not been even given a gun. Okay, if they don't understand field of fire and checking your target behind. So, that's why, getting rid of this DEI stuff, I mean, it's still important to just not judge people from a HR perspective or a human capital perspective on what they look like, but who's the best, and getting rid of guys just because they're white is, you're cutting out a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So in this article here, this is a person who's arguing, that DEI fails on a regular basis, and he's got three main reasons why it fails. And the first one really brings it to a fine point. Employee fatigue and backlash. Employees often start DEI initiatives with enthusiasm, but over time they become exhausted and discouraged due to a lack of organizational support and visible outcomes. This leads to a decrease in participation and a belief that DEI efforts are merely performative. And if you go on further, it speaks to the resentment. But you're right, James. We've spoken at length on that. But here's another article. DEI is failing because it promotes division instead of unity. And this is from this lady who claims to be a DEI, professional, whatever. And corporate America's rush to hire diversity, equity, and inclusion executives is slowing to a standstill, with chief diversity officers exiting at Disney, Netflix, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and other corporations. They're starting to see the emperor has no clothes. Tabia Lee herself, a former DEI professional, told the Post. It's important that company structures don't include these kinds of positions whose sole role is to promote divisions instead of unity, who turn the company or corporate mission into something that is focused on critical social justice instead of what the mission of the organization is to begin with. So, I mean, as an entrepreneur, what's the mission for you, Wayne?
Well, let me give you an example here that I was thinking about. If I took 20 people that led DEI programs at corporations and put them on the dock and said, "Hey, I've got a 200-foot vessel here. We're going to go out. It's a little stormy and a little windy. Could get worse, but I've got a very diverse crew. They're not qualified, but I've got a little bit of everybody on there, and I think you'll be okay." I guarantee you, not one of them would step on board. So it comes down to again, like James said, we're just back to the basics. We're running a business as a business. We need the good people in there to get through the hard times, and we need the good people in there to make hay when we have the good times.
Yeah, well said, Wayne. Good answer. So moving on from there, This is an interesting comment from this guy follow on Exa. One thing about DEI we should be grateful for, it's rendered the left-wing institutions most committed to it totally dysfunctional. ACLU deputy with $543,500 salary issues many false or misleading claims about pediatric gender medicine. So basically what's being said here is that the most qualified people are not getting the jobs, especially over 500,000 per year, for example. And as a direct result of that, there's a knowledge gap. So we've hired this person because of their gender or because of their skin color or both. And you end up with people in high paying positions that are underqualified. That in this particular instance, I don't think she said these false or misleading things on purpose. I think it was a lack of knowledge and qualifications and skill at the end of the day. So it's interesting how that's created a boomerang effect. And then this last one here kind of cracks me up. I don't know if y'all have had a chance to catch this in the brief, but if DEI is supposed to be great, why do they get mad when someone is called a DEI hire? I mean, the irony is pretty thick with that, if you ask me. See, even made James laugh about it. So anyway, interesting conversations, interesting times we live in. And what's really interesting is that the DEI stuff, for the most part, looks like it's already peaked and it's kind of, on the downfall now. At the end of the day, we have the most robust and sophisticated economy in the entire world. And in order to maintain that, greatness, we have to put the best people for the job in the position. So I don't know what it was like in Australia, Wayne, or James, but Wayne, question for you. Now, I know we don't go into banks very often anymore like we used to because we could do things online and blah, blah, blah. But when's the last time you walked into a bank and there was a male bank manager?
It's funny you say that because I had to go into a bank about 2 weeks ago, and walking in there, I realized I had not been into one in probably at least a year, maybe even longer. So I was more thinking about, because I was only a customer in there because nobody goes to banks anymore, like you said. But the teller was female, which is pretty typical in that role, always has been. My mother was a bank teller for a time in between driving the bus. So, in that role, that's pretty typical that I've seen, in my dealings with banks.
So maybe on a handful of occasions, I've seen a male bank manager from 1990 up until present. In the 1970s and 80s, it wasn't a rare thing to see a male bank manager, but it started to become a very rare thing late 80s, early 90s. So you got to ask yourself, why is that? And if anybody is in tune to money, it would be banks, right? So men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And my point is, and I'll ask James what his thoughts on this in a second, but women are far more pragmatic than men are. They will cross every T and dot every I. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not outliers. I've met men who are extremely pragmatic and they cross every T and dot every I. But we're talking in generalities. Women are far more pragmatic than men, and they will find any little mistake when it comes to banking, accounting, underwriting, all those sorts of things, which is why those positions are all dominated by women, because for the most part, they're better at it than we are. We're not wired the same way. But James, would it be safe to say, not the tenderfoot guys, but guys like us, that we have more of a military mindset where it's, y'all see that hill? We're going to go and take that hill. And when we're done with the hill, you guys can have the hill, meaning your operations team, and you can make it the perfect hill because you see this other hill over here. We're going to go take that hill next. Every single guy I know that is got an ounce of testosterone in him has that type of mindset.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're results driven. Okay. We've usually, for entrepreneurs, you've got a lot of problems, or you see something coming down the road that is going to be a problem. So you're either, forestalling problems, or you're conquering the next thing, or whether it's a, new customer, a new product, whatever. Okay. You don't have time to sort of mess around. And this is exactly why, this DEI stuff is is a problem, because it's another thing that from a HR perspective or a human capital perspective, you've got to tick the box, and it's just wastes so much time, and it's a paperwork exercise. That's all it is. I mean, I put in bids in Singapore when we had the oil and gas company, and we had to hire somebody to write this stuff out for us, and it was just verbal diarrhea, meant nothing. Okay, and we still had to show that we tried to hire a certain XYZ, but in the end, we already knew who we were going to hire for the job. So there's ways around it. But I mean, why have it in the first place? It promotes resentment, and it creates problems.
So your comment there took us full circle right back to where we started with when I played that person discussing DEI stuff at Costco. These are very nebulous pie in the sky things. Like, they're not something that you can record on your spreadsheet or in your accounting application to see what the return is. It's pious, it's nebulous, and it's I don't know what you want to call it. Makes them feel good, I guess.
Well, I think you can calculate it, because and it's gonna take time to be able to really see what the knock-on effect is. But if the loss of opportunity, the loss of things like this submersible blowing up, what's the knock-on effect for that company? I think we may be starting to see case studies similar to what we saw with Xerox and stuff like that. With the failure to innovate, this is going to be a case study that's going to happen 10 years down the track, where we try to do this diversity nonsense. What was the knock-on effect? And companies going bust because they tried to tick a box that was a nonsense.
Yeah, agreed. Wayne, you get the final word on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, I'm glad I'm seeing it run its course. It has no business in business. You got to put the right people in there to make sure your company succeeds. At the end of the day, it's all about the company. Whether business is up or down, the business has to survive, and the only way it survives is having the right people in the right place.
Yeah, well said, Wayne. Website aggressor.com, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Incredible, just incredible adventures for sure. But aggressor.com. How long have you had that domain name? Did the guy before you have that domain name?
They did. So they had done some pretty good things early on back in when the internet started to get some of the intellectual property tied down. So kudos to them.
So before you leave, just for shits and grins here, I want to see what it comes up at value wise. It's so high they don't even want to quote a price. They normally you can get a broker for about $50 to go ask the person if they want to sell and make a negotiation with them. And typically they pop a number up and they'll say like this domain is worth $1,500, $5,000, whatever the case may be. But the ones that are worth a lot of money, they don't even put it in there because they don't want to set anybody's expectations. They double or triple their fee and say, well, we'll ask, but no guarantee. So that's a valuable domain for sure.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, hope you have a great new year, Wayne. And for everybody else, we're fixing to start chapter 2 right after a quick message from one of our sponsors here, Sawyer Products. Thanks again, Wayne.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris, James.
All right.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks, man. Bye.
The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
All right, so we're into chapter 2 now. I want to say we have maybe around a dozen headline news articles that we're going to cover and comment on. The first one is encouraging. So the Guardian Angels will resume patrolling New York City subway cars following the tragic murder of a sleeping passenger who was burned to death aboard the train. We covered this a few days ago, and then there was a second person in Penn Station who was set on fire as well. It's good to see the Guardian Angels back again, though.
Well, in day and night patrols, 3-person patrols, we're all together, we're walking through the cars, which is something the police no longer do. Notice there are no mental health workers, there are no crisis intervention. They have all these fancy names. I never see them. And we spend millions of dollars, I might add. Our job is, A, do a wellness check on a homeless person. If they're homeless or emotionally disturbed, see if they're okay. If all of a sudden we walk into a situation where there's an episode, which oftentimes happens, we have to calm it down. A lot of times, these homeless and emotionally disturbed persons, they know of the Guardian Angels. We can have a calming effect. We can also bring the situation to the attention of cops on the platform. If there are cops, you're going to probably see them on the platform. Generally, that's why we always stick our heads out at the station, and we always check to the north, to the south. If there are any police officers, we would hold the door open, tell the conductor, we need the police presence here.
So, James, 2 questions. 1, are you familiar with the Guardian Angels? And 2, is there anything like the Guardian Angels in Australia?
Not really, mate. I mean, we had that incident that I've spoken about on your show before when, we had, large groups of Middle Eastern gangs that, a lot of people in Sydney had enough of when they beat up that young lifeguard. And the whole, but I mean, that was a reaction. They don't have stuff like this, but mind you, I mean, we don't have the same issues as, as what you've got in parts of this country. You don't have, the poverty, you don't have the drug problem, yada, yada. So, I mean, short answer is no, but I am familiar with them.
Fair enough. So here's a problem that you definitely don't have in Australia. I don't know if you caught this or not, but Joe Biden has not only been telling his aides, like it says up above, and I see somebody spelled AIDS wrong, but he's been publicly saying that he could have done better than Kamala and he could have beat Trump.
Maybe what he's saying is, I was better than Kamala. I had a better chance than Kamala.
Who knows? But he did say in the Washington Post, they're saying, he said, Biden and some of his aides still believe he should have stayed in the race. Despite the rocky debate performance and low poll numbers that prompted Democrats to pressure him to drop out, Biden and his aides have told people in recent days that he could have defeated Trump.
25%, either one of those numbers. They've raised $500 billion, I should say. They will make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think that's what he said either.
Donald Trump won the debate.
Oh, classic Trump there. He's awesome with the zingers, but yeah, Dementia Joe thinks he could have beat Trump.
I don't understand how people that are supposed to be professional anchors on TV can go on there and say with a straight face that, report on that. Like, why would you even report on something that is utter bullshit? I mean, anyway.
Well, did you call them anchors or wankers?
Well, I mean, it could be both, I mean, why on earth would they, and let's just say, okay, let's say the Biden administration say that they could have beat Kamala. I mean, it was the same administration that told him to go to the beach and, do nothing. It's this is a waste of time, even reporting on.
For sure. So speaking of reporting, and you know this, and our regulars know this, I read everything from the far left, like CNN, MSNBC, all the way to Alex Jones, everything in between. I'm always looking for things like, the Mockingbird media. When you see all the mainstream media, could be Fox, could be MSNBC, could be both of them, repeating the same story over and over again, it's 99% that it's bullshit. And if you follow the money, you'll figure out it's bullshit. But if you kind of get a little bit from each of these camps, you can put together a pretty good picture. Why do I mention this? I don't know if you're familiar with Scott Jennings, but he has been lighting people up on CNN. My suspicion is that they, their numbers are tanking, right? CNN during the day gets 38,000 viewers for a show, and at night gets 100,000. Their numbers are garbage. Like Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson blow these guys away. And I think that they put Scott Jennings in because they wanted to, people like you and me to actually pay attention to them again. And if that's the case, whatever, good on them. But I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he slays people. He does a pretty good job in this video.
Middle East and foreign policy will also stand the test of time.
You think the Middle East is in better shape today than when he took office?
Well, I think he got our hostages home. I think that's a big deal. I think it's important.
I'm sorry, which hostages?
He's gotten a number of people home. He was able.
There's still 100 people over there.
Well, there were more than
including some Americans. Look, I think he's gonna leave office in disgrace. The Hunter Biden pardon was disgraceful. He's going to be remembered largely for inflation and for the disastrous Afghanistan pullout. And I think as we continue to, we're just getting the first draft of this now, but as we continue to learn about the massive cover-up that went on, not about his health, but about his mental acuity, to cover that up, the efforts on that were undertaken by the White House staff, by his family, not in the last couple of months, but for all 4 years, I think it's going to be a really ugly chapter. It's a diminished presidency because of it. And I think we still don't know the full extent of what they did to try to hide what they've been doing over in the West Wing.
So I think leaving in disgrace is when you have an insurrection at the Capitol. Like, that's leaving in disgrace. Being impeached twice is leaving in disgrace.
So you got to be like seriously low information, low IQ, or just outright liar to say what he just said. You can't have an insurrection without guns. The only person murdered was Ashley Babbitt by Michael Byrd. And the impeachment the impeachments were such bullshit. It's not even worth the oxygen to review them and go through them again, and the funny thing is that Joe Biden has enriched himself by money laundering through the Ukraine. But when Donald Trump asked some questions regarding that topic, he deserves to be impeached. I mean, it's again, so I'm happy to see Scott Jennings on there, but then you got, these low IQ people like that making asinine comments about insurrections. It's all bullshit, every last bit of it. So, James, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Pete Hegseth. We've done a couple of videos recently with some friends of him that are operators, SEAL team, Rangers, Delta Force, etc. And this is interesting. Concerns are rising among military officials that Pete Hegseth, if confirmed as Secretary of Defense, could dismiss up to 20 woke generals and high-ranking officers. What's your reaction? So you served in the Australian military.
Yep.
I have to assume there was no woke stuff then, but if there was, tell me about it. But would you want to go shoulder to shoulder, go to war with somebody beside you who's, I don't know what you want to call it, like a disciple of this woke BS? Or do you want another hardcore guy like Pete Hegseth?
Well, mate, I mean, look, the military over this last administration has just ended up being a joke. It used to be that, and, there's always been sort of gays in the military and cross-dressers and stuff like that. And it was all sort of hush-hush behind closed doors. But now you've got people on TikTok that are in their military uniform and then doing a shift up and they're in full drag. I mean, that used to be, you used to have to go to the brig for that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, and they're, and war isn't the same as what it used to be. It's largely drone operators and things like that. But you still need boots on the ground. I mean, it is a bit of a joke. I mean, I saw a thing with Don Fry the other day, saying that, no, I'll pull back on that one because I don't want to offend some of your listeners, mate. But, we are looked at as a bit of a joke. And that includes, Australia as well.
Yeah, it's we've spoken on this subject at length, so I'll get off and move on to the next one, because this is really offensive, and I'm not sure if you caught this or not. The secret slush fund that U.S. Congress created that paid out more than $17 million of your money to quietly settle charges of sexual harassment, rape, and sexual assault on the underage just got bigger, and the list of names just got larger. It turns out members of U.S. Congress have been also quietly settling their sexual harassment, rape, and sexual assault on the underage through their office budgets. In other words, not only those names should be released, every single member of the U.S. Congress should be audited at once, and we'll call it the Ethics Report for the Underage Act. I'm not going to play the video because we're running a little bit long on time, but this is just downright offensive. And I'll just give a quick anecdote here. I was told by two members of our intelligence community, that when somebody gets elected to the House of Representatives or the Senate and they end up in Washington, D.C., typically they don't have a home or a condo or an apartment out of the gate. So they end up staying in nice hotels, higher end hotels. And basically the whatever you want to call them, the NWO, the deep state, they study the person and find out what their proclivities are. And then lo and behold, while they're sitting at the bar in this restaurant, whatever this thing is they have an attraction for shows up beside them. Next thing you know, they end up in the hotel room. The hotel room's got video cameras and microphones, and they record the whole sordid mess. And then a vote comes up a month or two down the road, and they say to the person, you're going to vote on this bill in this particular way. And when the person says, no, I'm not, that's I don't believe in that, they show them a piece of the evidence and say, you're going to vote the way we tell you to vote from now on, or we're going to release the tapes. And this is what this slush fund speaks to here, where you've got all these creeps who have a thing for underage children, and they've got evidence on it. And that's why every last one of these people in the public eye, it could be Tom Hanks, it could be a politician, and everything in between. It's why you see them going hard against Trump and, saying ridiculous things, because it's being lorded over them. And like I said, that's from two members of the intelligence community that told me that. I don't know if you want to add to that or not, James, but it's an atrocity at the least.
Well, it's disgusting, but I mean, I've heard about it more and more since I've been doing this with you, mate. And it baffles me, why nothing's really being done about it. You've got these people in key positions, and they've got these, I don't want to say kinks, but this sickness. So, why aren't they just taking a task over it?
Yeah, well, I think it's so pervasive, and there's so many people involved in it that, I mean, it's a ginormous hairball, for lack of a better term. I don't know how else to describe it, really. But anyway, moving on from there. So here's some interesting comments from Adam Schiff back in 2018, 2019, with regards to what happens to Donald Trump when he's out of office versus what Trump is saying with regards to Biden and him breaking laws before and during his presidency.
On the day Donald Trump leaves office, the Justice Department may indict him. Very strongly in favor of indicting the president when he is out of office.
I don't think the incoming president should be threatening his political opponents with jail time. That's not the kind of talk we should hear from a president in a democracy.
Did you catch the gist of that, James, where basically in 2018-19, he's saying that the DOJ should go after Trump. And now Trump's saying we're going to investigate a whole bunch of things like the 2020 election. And when we find people that have broke the law, we're going to go after them. And now Adam Schiff is the exact opposite. Well, you shouldn't do that to a president when they leave office. I mean,
well, I mean, it's laughable, the amount of stuff that people get away with here. And, I hope Trump does, more to really stop this nonsense and get back to, fixing, the country.
So, you probably recall 2 years ago, I said that as much as it pisses me off that they stole the 2020 election, like literally stole the election, If Trump had two back-to-back terms, the next time a globalist was put into office, they would undo all of Donald Trump's work with the stroke of a pen, just like Joe Biden did on day one. Okay. And I've been saying for 2 years, I think that it's unfolded the way it has for a better outcome, because this version of Trump is nowhere near as trusting as the first version was. And this time around, yeah, he's going to have to do some stuff initially by executive order, but he has an opportunity to put laws in place that are long-lasting laws, so they can't be wiped out with a stroke of a pen. And if he doesn't do that, whatever, positive changes he makes will end up getting, trashed in the long run. So anyway, moving on to our good friend Tom Holman here. Here's how Tom Holman plans to track down the 300,000 missing migrant children. It's 500,000 now, according to the DHS, not 300,000. And this is pretty long, so I don't want to read this whole thing. I'll play part of the video, but it basically speaks to the fact that they can get locations on all of the people, obviously, through their cell phones, and then go after the children that were, handed over to certain individuals at the border.
Can we talk more about those many, many children that are missing, the unaccompanied children that came across the border? What kinds of plans do you have to retrieve these kids or to find them?
Well, look, I've been honest right from day one that this is going to be one of the most difficult things we've ever done, because without giving away a lot of law enforcement sensitive information, I can tell you we all have a footprint. We all have the digital footprint, right? You own a home, you own a car, you have a credit card, you pay bills. Children don't have a footprint. So we're going to have to count on the footprint of the sponsors they release them to. And from what I'm hearing from some of the whistleblowers, some of these sponsors weren't even fingerprinted. Some of these sponsors, their vetting was very poor. So we don't even know if they are who they claim they are. So it's going to be hard. But what I've been saying the last couple of weeks is we're going to deputize every American citizen to help us find these children, because parents have an innate skill to notice when something's not right with a child. Whether you see a child at a workplace that looks obviously too young to work, or if you see a child with an adult that just don't seem right, parents have that sense. I'm a parent. I have that sense. Yeah. We're going to provide ways through an 1-800 number and websites so they can call in and say, look, something just doesn't right here. And look, I don't want to be afraid of people making mistakes. If 1 out of 1,000 calls turns out to rescue a child, that's worth it, right? Because I tell you, based on my 3.5 decades doing this job, a lot of these children are going to be in forced sexual slavery. Many are going to be in forced labor. And not all of them, but many of them are living a life of hell every day, and we got to rescue these children.
So Tom Holman, right guy at the right time to lead these mass deportations. I don't know if you followed Tom very closely, James, but the guy he's diehard, man.
But I mean, he's the right. I don't think Trump could have picked somebody better. Not that my opinion means much being an Aussie, but I don't think he could have picked somebody better. And I just, from a personal standpoint, it's a pity that I'm not a citizen yet, because I would volunteer for that security team in a heartbeat.
Well, I mean, that's very kind of you to say that. So moving on to the next one here, and I like the words that are used by J.K. Rowling here. That thing that never happens has happened again. A former female inmate at the Washington Correction Center for Women has initiated legal action against the Washington Department of Corrections. She alleges she was repeatedly sexually assaulted by her cellmate, Christopher Scott Williams, a transgender mentally ill woman. The lawsuit brings attention to the department's policies on transgender inmate housing and raises questions about safety and rights within the prison system. I mean, I don't think we even need to comment on it. It's just such a freaking mess. So
yeah, I agree.
J.K. Rowling again, no trans kids sparks outrage and support. So J.K. Rowling has reignited the debate over transgender issues by asserting on social media that there are no trans kids, arguing that children are not born in the wrong body. This statement has sparked a range of responses from criticism to support across social media platforms. Discussions have included concerns about the potential harm to transgender youth, the validity of transgender identities, and the implications for transgender healthcare. So, James, this is one of the topics where I hope that Trump makes some permanent changes in that. I personally think if you have a youngin under the age of 18 and an adult counsels that child to get surgery, take different types of hormones and hormone blockers and all that stuff, they should go to jail for that. And if they're a surgeon who cuts off youngins' genitals, then they should go to jail for the rest of their life. And we need laws like that put in place in this, brief window of opportunity we have with Trump. And that's the kind of stuff I don't think would have been fixed if he had 2 back-to-back tenures. I don't know if you want to add anything to it. I know your thoughts are the same as mine. As transgender stuff is
it's people are able to do whatever they want. It's one of the rights of being an American. But if they're not allowed to vote and they're not allowed to go into a bar and buy a drink, they don't have the freedoms, then they shouldn't be making decisions for them, and they're manipulating minors. Okay, and I don't think that it should be life in prison. I think that they should be just publicly shot.
Right.
And I'd donate the bullets, 100%. I would donate the bullets. I think that, messing with kids that have got enough on their plate trying to, get through society in today's day and age with all the worries and whatnot, and just growing up normal. The last thing they need to be worried about is having other shit pulled in their head. So, yeah, I think they should be shot, particularly if they're going to go and put them on hormone blockers and screw with their body chemistry and, the knock-on effect of surgery. I think they should be just publicly shot.
Don't disagree. Hopefully the AI doesn't zing us for that one. But anyway, moving on to the last part of chapter 2, and then we'll be into chapter 3, is this discussion between Don Lemon and the toilet bowl cleaner. And this is the biggest lie of the year. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts, the biggest lie of the year. Unbelievable.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game. So he has a vision. He has knowledge. He has judgment. He has a strategic thinking.
I met with the president, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he seemed fine to me.
I have complete confidence in the president.
That's halfway through the video. I can't take it anymore. But that right there is the absolute lie of the year. How anybody can trust these people is just completely beyond me. We knew they were lying when they said this. I mean, I don't imagine there'll be any accountability for it, even though there should be. And again, we've kind of beat this topic to death. You're welcome to comment on it if you want, but Joe Biden is not the quickest bunny in the forest.
Mate, he's not, I got in trouble the last time that I gave my opinion on Kamala Harris. So I think people know what my opinion is, as colorful as I try to deliver it. But it's laughable, absolutely laughable that people that are in positions of power, that are supposed to be, heads of a country to do the right thing by the people, will just outright lie like that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. There should be accountability.
Yeah, you said it though. These are outright lies. Personally, I think that I've been thinking about this whole thing with broadcast licenses. So nobody typically in the FCC goes after news stations that knowingly publish lies, right? Where they make up all these crazy stories. Like there's a P tape of Donald Trump in a hotel in Moscow with a prostitute pissing on him in bed, sort of thing. And it's defamatory and it's complete bullshit. He's won a handful of suits and he's going to crank that up even higher and win more lawsuits. And I've been struggling with this, James, as far as there has to be some, accountability and price to be paid for telling lies like that. So there's language out there already in the FCC regulations with regards to their broadcast license, but nobody's really enforced it. Brendan Carr, who's coming in as the leader of the FCC, has said he's going to go after broadcast licenses, but that then creates the problem of who is the arbiter of truth. And is the arbiter of truth whoever the person in power appoints, right? So then it becomes weaponized even more. But we had a bunch of people in our audience say that they don't think that the FCC should intervene on broadcast licenses or anything like that, that, it's a First Amendment freedom of speech, which I don't disagree with. So I was thinking it through, and I think that maybe we combine two things to go after these, propaganda outlets. And that is that, let's say you get defamed by CBS and you sue CBS over the defamation. There should be another opportunity in there where the judge has the right and the obligation to rule on whether or not what they said about you that was wrong gets them a strike. And after the court system gives them 3 strikes, they lose their broadcast license for a period of time, whatever the case may be. So maybe we put it in the judiciary's hands that they can get strikes against their broadcast license in the civil arena. I don't know. I'm throwing this at you out of the blue, but
Well, mate, I think what should happen is, what happened in, like you talk about broadcasting, okay, what used to happen in the 80s, okay, if somebody did irresponsible journalism, they'd just get fired.
Right.
Okay. And so, why isn't that happening now? Okay.
Well, because I think the problem's higher up, right? So in the 80s, we had over 600 independently owned news organizations in the United States. We now have 5 conglomerates that own 95% of the media outlets. And the anchor that you see that's telling the lie has been ordered to do that by their immediate superior, who's been ordered to do it by the people who own the station. So you could throw the anchor to the wolves, but it doesn't solve the problem as far as broadcast licenses are concerned.
Yeah, I suppose. As you say, like something from a regulatory point of view, okay, would, you're taking away their broadcasting license, okay, that means that, their revenue streams are largely, advertising. So,
Big pharma.
Yeah, big pharma and stuff like that. So, that would be a good way to look at it. I hope that they do something, but something's got to be done. The amount of misinformation that's out there is ridiculous.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the NDAA. So we have this piece of legislation called the National Defense Authorization Act. Okay. And every year the provisions of the NDAA are altered to suit what's going on at this point in time with regards to our defense. And then those changes get voted on. Okay. So in 2012, Obama pressed for a change to the NDAA, which was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. Okay. So, which had been around since 1948. So up until 2012, here's the deal, is federal agencies, 3-4 letter agencies, could hand over something, say, to a producer in Australia that was complete bullshit, and the Australian media could pump it out to the Australian public, even though it was complete bullshit. And that was a fair usage of weaponization. Okay. But what you couldn't do was the same thing domestically. But when Obama got his way with the NDAA of 2012, it took the penalties away. It took the process away in America. So since 2012, a government agency can go to a media outlet and say, here's a story we want you to publish. They used to have to disclose that a government agency gave them the information, and they had to put that at the beginning of the story. 2012 got rid of that. So what we're getting now is crooked SOBs and 3-4 letter agencies handing over this supposed intelligence to the mainstream media, which is complete propaganda. It's never disclosed that it came from a government agency. It is put out there like verbatim, like it's the truth. Okay. And that is what has fucked up our media and Americans in general here, because there's so much BS that gets put out there that would have never been allowed prior to 2012. And I mean, it's a bit of an extended discussion and explanation there, but they wouldn't have got away with this in the past, James, is what I'm getting at. And we need to go back to that way. It's not right that the government can feed manipulated material to the media to convince Americans to believe in some falsehood. It's not right.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. And I think I've said on this show before that in 2019, when I was back in Australia, on commercial TV, there was this ad that would come up, and it was just, some text on a black screen saying, the news that you're getting is not always accurate. Okay, so and I didn't have time to dig into it too much because I was too busy trying to get my visa to get back over here and start the business. But it's interesting on them putting that on commercial TV. Yeah,
100%. Anyway, that's the end of chapter 2. So everything from here on in is memes and zany headlines and stuff like that. I want to give a quick shout out to Black Forest Supplements and their NMN. I don't know if you've heard of this, James. They call it like an anti-aging product, and I can't speak to that. I'm not a scientist, right? But the FDA is going after these guys because Big Pharma wants to turn this into a prescription-only product. So that tells you what the efficacy is like. But what I can tell you is, I mean, I've got 10 years on you, but energy and recovery is the biggest thing for me these days. So I've been taking these for about 6 months, James, and twice I've done an experiment where I stopped taking it for a couple of days and my energy level completely fell off a cliff when I did that. So wow. I don't know about it being anti-aging. Maybe it is. I can't say that, but I can say energy wise that plus the branch chain aminos from Native Hydrate. I mean, you've trained, you've lifted weights for years and exercise and stuff. Most of the time, products like this, BCAAs, that they're good for you, but they taste like shit most of the time. And
and they usually play with your gut health as well.
Bingo, exactly. So this stuff here, and there's a link down below. You can get up to 44% off with our link. It tastes really good. Number one. Number two, my energy level goes up, and I'm not into drinking sodas and all that shit. I've been telling our audience, if they drink sodas and sweet teas and they switch over to this, which tastes really, really good, within 24 hours, their energy level will go way up. And that's just a fact. So I can't say enough good things about these guys. They're a really good company to work with. Native Hydrate, nativehydrate.com/dispatch, link down below. But I know since you train, it might be something you're interested in. Next time you're here, remind me and I'll give you some. I just bought like a 3-month supply.
No worries, mate. I'd be interested to give you some feedback on it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. I mean, like I said, I got 10 years on you. So
if
it works for me, it should work for you. But anyway,
exactly.
here's the first zany, funny one. So this girl says, don't plan any fuckery before January 20th because that tree of liberty is looking thirsty.
This message is to the elites and the powers that be. On November 5th, you were sent a resounding message. And that message was very simple. You don't get to wage a culture war against the majority of Americans. You don't get to choke us nearly to death with inflation. You don't get to threaten parents in this country and use our children as pawns. You don't get to stack the deck in your favor using legislation. You don't get to flood our country with fucking illegal immigrants. And you don't get to use our military to fight your fucking rich man's wars. You don't get to force us to choose between an experimental vaccine and keeping our job. You don't get to choose what is information and what is misinformation. And you don't get to choose whether or not you want to follow the Constitution of the United States of America. When we said we are taking our fucking country back, we meant it. So for any of you who are planning some fuckery between now and January, I'd be really careful because that tree of liberty is looking thirsty.
Not just the fact that she's a woman, but her generation. It's good to see that because a lot of her generation, don't think in the ways that my generation does, at least. So anyway, all right, next one up. So the visualization here, we don't have to play the whole thing. The visualization is that essentially this Obama's third term, they're going to set the place on fire before Donald Trump comes through the front door. And I think we're seeing that now with, so we had an emergency declared 4 or 5 days ago in California over the bird flu bullshit. And now they're ratcheting it up even further around the country. And they're trying to say it's going to be like the next big pandemic, but it's going to kill way more people than COVID. They're literally trying to burn things to the ground and hand it over to Donald Trump and hamstring him like they did with COVID.
Isn't Fauci in jail at the moment?
No, he deserves to be in jail, but no, he is not.
Okay, I thought I heard something that he's being indicted and is going to be taken to court soon. Anyway.
Well, I believe that we'll see some people attempt to do that. I hope they succeed. Hard to say, though. Next video here, I won't play the whole thing. It's a couple minutes, but this guy is from CNN. It's undercover. Look what we did. We got Trump out and Biden in. This is total election fraud. This is, qualifies RICO. It's organized across state lines, et cetera, et cetera. I hope to God that this stuff gets ferreted out in this second term.
We would always show shots of him jogging, him in aviator shades, and like you paint him as a young geriatric.
We were creating a story there that we didn't know anything about. So that's I think that's propaganda.
Look what we did. We got Trump out. I am 100% going to say it, and I 100% believe it, that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have got voted out.
So not only did they screw the American public over, there's somewhere, but James, depending on whose numbers you want to believe, they say that if the Hunter Biden laptop story wasn't, they didn't say it was Russian disinformation, and the 51 liars didn't say that it was misinformation, that it would have swung somewhere between 6 million and 11 million votes away from Biden towards Trump. We got 15 million mysterious votes that showed up in 2020. If you look at 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024, you've got 15 million extra votes in 2020 that didn't exist in any other election year. That they cheated their freaking asses off. But whether it was election interference on that, or the fact there was a comment made there with regards to Biden's mental acuity, I mean, they have done nothing but spread absolute BS propaganda, and it's election interference. But again, I think in the long run, we're better off for it. Put it that way.
Well, I mean, just on that, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, Trump's had time to regroup. Okay, know where his allies are. Okay, he's been able to plan a lot better, and I think that he's going to be a hell of a lot better prepared this time, and he's going to know who his allies are, and where his where his allies really are.
Yeah, I agreed. And I know we're running long on time, so I'm going to rush through some of this stuff. I'm not going to play this video. I don't really need to, but this was basically a panel on CBS admitting that Trump will get at least one Supreme Court appointment in this term, possibly two. If he was to get two, you would be looking at a conservative Supreme Court for decades, literally. It's a pretty big deal. All right, moving on to something funny. This one cracks me up. Check this out, okay? So Temu, warehouse burns down
in New York.
Yeah, and it's been estimated that the total loss of inventory is as high as $56.19.
Well, they really overstated how much room they were going to need.
Well, no, the joke that this person is making is that everything from Temu is pennies on the dollar. So, like you can buy things like shirts like this, you can buy for $8-9 off of Temu. So that's that's why it's the $56.19, because everything, it's all penny stuff, basically. Pretty funny. All right. I don't know if you're into snow skiing, alpine skiing, or anything like this, but
I'm a snowboarder.
Whoa, would you take a snowboard down this? Check this out.
You got this.
No. Oh God.
That's friggin' intense.
Yeah, that's a better man than me. No thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like my knees, and I like, you know, yeah, I like my knees.
Absolutely. All right, so here's another video. Again, I'm not going to play the video because we're running short on time. It's a 3-minute video, but what this lady does, she takes that rack of ribs, okay, and she puts it on top of the rad housing, the shroud over the rad, and wraps it all up. And she says it has to get to 160 degrees to cook. They've got a 4-hour drive, and technically it should be cooked by the time they stop. And here you go. They got nice crispy ribs, and she cuts them open, and the ribs are cooked absolutely perfectly. And her husband thought the whole thing wasn't going to work. Pretty ingenious, you know, going on a road trip, throw the rack of ribs on the engine, and when you get there, you got freshly cooked ribs.
I used to do that in Australia. Just, you know,
Well,
crack an egg and put it on the dash, on the dash on the bonnet. You know.
Next time you're heading to Tennessee, I want to see, you know, a brisket or a rack of ribs cooked on the engine of your truck there.
Okay, won't be happening for a couple of months. I can tell you that much, mate.
Fair enough. All right, so this is Ayn Rand, you know, very famous conservative author. Again, I'm not going to play the video because we're short on time. Go grab the sit rep for today, situation report, patreon.com/survival dispatch. But basically, she says the most dangerous institutions today, and this is back in the 60s for crying out loud, are universities, because they teach ideas that will lead to the destruction of the United States. And boy, was she ever prescient. I mean, she predicted that one perfectly, right? All right.
Agreed.
So next one here, and I can't tell you how much I hate to see this shit happening in Texas. So you got Austin and Dallas County in particular, two very blue dots in a red state. San Antonio's kind of going that way as well. Basically people coming from California and bringing their shitty culture with them to Texas. But I'm not going to play this whole video. It's 30 seconds, but we don't need to play it all. This is just ridiculous.
Oh, Jesus.
Bunch of fucking goat fuckers. Just can't believe that we've allowed this to happen in our country. Absolutely insane. All right. So
ridiculous.
Totally. So I am going to play this one. Listen carefully to this bomb scare story on the news.
Moments for customers at a Kansas Home Depot. Police responded to reports of a bomb threat at the store in Wichita. A customer alerted employees. A man inside the bathroom said there was a bomb in the building. Police were able to locate the man responsible for those comments, and that man told police he warned other guests to leave the restroom because he was, quote, fixing to blow it up, but had no intention of causing a panic. Man also told police others in the room laughed, understanding his joke, which I'm just now getting. Home Depot says they will not be pressing charges. Well, I can tell you right now, you asked the producer for me to read that, didn't you?
Jesus Christ.
Sit now, please.
No.
Oh, he was fixing to blow up the bathroom.
God.
Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard this, but Jimmy Carter passed away, and just before he died, he made a phone call and he thanked Obama and Biden for he knew he could now die, and he's not the worst president in history because these two took the number 1 and 2 slots.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
All right. So Kamala Harris paid $2 million to rent Oprah and Lost. Donald Trump put a sticker on a garbage truck and won.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you would be at the tail end of Gen Xers, but this is funny. Millennial and Gen Z, I'm offended. Gen X, who gives a shit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man.
Oh, right on. All right. Next one. Ever wonder why kids didn't shoot up schools back then? Because they were raised to respect God, their parents, and their country. And
Yeah.
that is the absolute truth. Next one up here, Dr. Evil. From now on, money laundering will be called foreign
Fucking
aid.
age.
Did you hear just the other day ago that some official in the Ukrainian government basically came to somebody in the news media and said that they had evidence showing that 50% of the money that went from us to them actually came back to us and back to shell corporations and NGOs and all that kind of stuff, which I don't know if that's the case, but I suspect it is the case.
There was a female on the Sean Ryan show a number of months ago that was going into that. She went into it with quite a lot of detail on
Sarah
she went into it with quite a lot of detail. So I mean, this stuff is known. Why isn't there something being done about it? It's the question.
Well, I mean, it's literally the most corrupt country in the world, and it's been used for decades, for at least 3 decades now, for money laundering purposes. But all right, moving on to the next one. Big Mike speaks out. I got the vax, and now they tell me it can cause erectile dysfunction.
God.
No, too funny. All right, moving on to the next one. Tom Cruise was 2022's highest paid actor. He made $100 million. Base Satori replies, actually, Zelensky was the highest paid actor. He got 18 billion.
yeah, exactly.
All right, next one. It's not a sanctuary city. It's called harboring fugitives. And we are going to see those federal statutes applied and city officials and county officials going to jail over this shit. Train your boys to be men before our enemies train them to be women. That's a mouthful right there.
Exactly.
Danish 17-year-old girl who used a pepper spray to fight off a rapist near migrant asylum center is told she will be prosecuted for carrying the weapon.
Yeah, because I mean that goes back to Australia. I mean, stuff like that is illegal to have. Okay, so they want to know where she got it from and whatnot. They're not worried about the rapist. It's
criminal. It's absolutely
it is criminal.
Yeah. I can't say for sure that this is the actual temperature in Alaska, which is where this was supposedly taken, but it probably is minus 74 freaking degrees. Coldest I've been is negative 42, and I thought I was going to freaking die. So anyway, here's a portrait of our 3 last Democrat presidents doing the things that they do. All right. America versus Great Britain. Fries versus chips. Airplane versus aeroplane. Subway versus underground. Memes versus 2 years in jail.
Yep.
Just insanity. All right. Here we go. She has balls. Fact check it. Oh my God, this next one, James, is so fucking funny. Why are women evacuated first in a disaster? First guy answers so men can think of a solution in silence. Friggin' hilarious. All right. And here's another one on this. A Polish official even says half of US aid to Ukraine was stolen and laundered back to Democrats.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, crazy. Who can name the 3 branches of government? The first kid says corporation. Second one says pedophiles. The third one says media.
There you go. Yeah.
Funny, but not funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's just the fact that it's funny because it's true is scary.
Yeah, it sure is. This is an interesting picture here. All life splatter. Nobody cares about your protest. Keep your ass out of the road. Amen to that.
Yep.
This one cracks me up. Just think of them as shoes.
Exactly right.
All right. And then you got this fag with pipe cleaner arms. David Hogg, Americans have no right to a gun. Apparently he didn't get to the Second Amendment part. He's not the swiftest person there. This is pretty crazy. You want to talk about decrease in the American population? Look at the numbers here. So back to 1800, the average woman had 7 children, and 2020, way down here, I mean, that may even be below 1. It's at 1 maximum versus 7 there. It's it's a huge deal, right? And it's a part of the reason that we're losing our culture to a large extent. I mean, we used to have our own culture. We referred to America as the melting pot, the great melting pot. And the Democrats are trying to turn it into more of a cultural mosaic, and basically everybody's allowed to have their culture and bring their culture here except for us, is what it boils
Yeah,
down to.
exactly. And the thing is, the people that are coming here are the ones that are breeding. So,
Correct.
it's you and me can unpack that one because it's there's a lot of reasons for it, but anyway.
Right on. Okay, so drill baby drill, build baby build, farm baby farm, deport baby deport.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got some work to do. Oh, and check this out: proof that a man did walk on the moon. And tell me this one isn't the truth hit home. January 20th is the new Independence Day. And all right, next one up. I love it when our balls slap together.
God,
there's a mental image for you. And on the same topic, 0 women have claimed to have had sex with Barack Hussein Obama. Well, but that's none of my business.
Yeah, exactly.
Explain this one. 2019, Joe Biden, 9 million net worth. Kamala Harris, 6.3 million. 2022, halfway through their term, Joe Biden, 41 million. Kamala Harris, 28 million.
Well, you know why that is. I mean, it's obvious.
Crooked as a dog's hind leg. All right. Monica Lewinsky spent more time in the Oval Office than Joe Biden.
Yep.
Funny, but not funny sort of thing. John Rich, this is good. It's nice to see the drones over New Jersey took a break to celebrate Christmas. But then again, the government always work on, or blah, the government doesn't work on holidays.
Exactly.
It was all psyop big time.
Exactly.
This link is in the brief, the sit rep. I'm not going to play it. It's 5 minutes long. Grab a box of tissue before watching. I don't want to ruin it for anybody who wants to watch this, but this video and what this man's granddaughter did for him is just absolutely unbelievable. So I would encourage you to go to patreon.com /survival dispatch, sign up for a free membership. You can get 50% of the briefs. Tonight's brief, you have to be a paying member. It's $9.99. Or actually, I forgot, the team activated one-time deals as well. So it's 44 pages in tonight's brief. You can buy it for $3.99, or you can sign up for $9.99 a month, or you can sign up $95 for the year. You get 20% off when you do it that way. And we appreciate your support very, very much. All right. With that being said, I got something for you here, James.
All right, mate.
You remember Reggie, who was at the big black guy who was at BDU?
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
He's just a super good natured guy. So our mutual friend has got a trigger coming out for AKs that performs like the forced reset triggers do for ARs. Check this out. This is pretty cool. It's only about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
AK flick. AK flicks. The crazy part about this thing, it can fit in all platforms. This right here is in a 9 mil. We running in the 7.62, 5.45, short, even in the Draco, the long 16-inch. AK flicks, baby.
So those people are looking for the fastest triggers out there. Flexindustries.com. James can attest to it. They've got some pretty badass triggers. Their Glock G Flex trigger, which is 100% legal, unlike a Glock switch, is pretty impressive. James is kind of involved in this stuff right from ground zero. And
mate, and really good guys, and and now that they're sort of starting to diversify and get into other stuff, I really wish them the best. They've got some really good products and really good quality as well.
Yeah, awesome stuff for sure. So there's a link in the brief. There's a link in the description, flexindustries.com. You can use code SD17 to get 17% off. And while we're on that topic, you can go to pilgrimammunition.com and you can use the discount code Survival Dispatch 10 and get 10% off on James's ammo, which is the most lethal, badass ammo on the market, bar none. If you're not familiar with it, James and I have shot a lot of content together on this stuff. Essentially, he has a 9mm round that travels over 2,000 feet per second out of a pistol with a 5-inch or shorter barrel, 2,500 feet per second out of a PCC like the Christensen Arms ones that's behind me, consistently 25-50, just amazing. But it's a 50-grain projectile that breaks apart and sends the hydrostatic shock sideways, laterally, up, down, every direction instead of going through. There's about zero chance that it's going to go through somebody and kill the person behind them. But, you could get shot, let's say, through the shoulder with something like a 5.56 or whatever, high rate of velocity. It's not going to tickle, but it's going to go in and out and doesn't cause the type of damage that James's stuff does. With James's stuff, if you wing somebody right here, you'll turn the left ventricle of their heart into jelly. It's incredible stuff. James, if you want to do a shameless plug, by all means do so.
No, mate, I think you've said it just as good or better than what I can, mate. I mean, we're proud of it, and we're really happy with all the content that Survival Dispatch has afforded us. So, check out the content on Survival Dispatch, and we've done a lot of stuff there. Aggravated some armor companies as well.
Basically, James ruined our relationship with every armor company out there. They would send us, say, 3A panels that are rated up to 44 Magnum for 5 shots, and they say good against 9mm. Well, it's not good against James's 9mm, and we would absolutely shred it and say, like, look, you got to change your advertising to say most 9mm, not all 9mm, because it's just factually not true. And that was the end of that. But I've got a couple gel blocks of yours sitting right over here, James, that just
nice.
I mean, when people watch the videos, they're just blown away at the damage that happens. But anyways, we'll move on from there. We're in the home stretch. We got a little bit of homework for y'all, and then the conflict of question, and we're done for tonight. So the homework is relative to the first chapter of the night. What can you do in light of what we discussed in chapter number 1? So here you go. Speak out against anti-white racist DEI practices. Share DEI offenses and failures on your socials. Follow Robbie Starbuck on X, the leading influencer who exposes DEI failures. The guy has done stuff at like the James O'Keefe level when it comes to DEI crap. Number 4, support the American Alliance for Equal Rights. And that's American Alliance for Equal Rights.org. Link is in the brief. And the last one, write to your Congress rep and senator when any bills are proposed that push anything even remotely related to DEI. Have you got anything else you'd like to add to that, James? What people can do in light of all this DEI crap?
Just ignore it and get on with growing your business. Okay. And, if you're in larger companies, PLCs and things like that, you try to minimize it. Okay. Or at least make it, factual, helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
Not just bollocks. But yeah, anyway.
Well said. There's 2 new sections, by the way, to the sit rep, and the sit rep is going to continue to evolve very quickly into a very polished document daily newspaper. If you look at our Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines over on Patreon, you look at our Essentials Guide, 228 pages, you get it for free when you sign up. We will be producing stuff at that level of quality for the daily sit reps. So super polished, but even though we use it for the episodes that we do, there's certain things we can't put on certain platforms. So we've added a new section at the bottom for restricted content. So stuff we can't put, or else we're going to get more strikes. We're sitting on 2 strikes right now. So if we get another one before those 2 expire, we'll be done. We'll be permanently, our channel will be deleted and we'll be gone from YouTube. So, the other thing that we've added to the sit rep, and it'll get more polished, is we have relationships with over 300 vendors. We get sent an incredible amount of products. You can ask James when he comes in my office. It's like it's a candy store for for
It's
Adam.
Candyland. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Candyland for
all this
breakfast.
stuff that gets sent to us. But I can tell you a true number because I record everything in a spreadsheet. Less than 10% of what gets sent to us makes it on the channel. We're not in the business of hurting other people's businesses. So if a product fails, we either tell them we're not putting it on or we'll send it back. They always say, don't send it back, just keep it. But at the end of the day, I've put maybe our top 20 relationships in every single sit rep from now on. It's got clickable links. It's got discount links. It's got discount codes for the, call it 24 products and companies we're willing to support out of a list of well over 300. So the daily sit rep has a lot of value in it with all of those things. And we're down to the conflicted question, and that's it. So, and you've got an MBA. I'm just a college dropout. But why do centrally planned economies such as the Soviet Union, North Korea's, or Venezuela's ultimately fail?
Well, mate, there's a lot of reasons, but you know, it comes down to, I mean, they're ring fencing themselves off from the rest of the planet. Okay, and you know, we need to have cross-border transactions and commerce to to really survive in the world. And if everybody else is doing it, you want to ring fence yourself because you've got some strange ideas, or you put yourself in a position where other people need to control you from doing things that are silly, okay, like potentially harm the rest of the world. That's why they fail, okay, because you need to sort of learn to get along with people. And that's a it's kind of a cuddly feely way of looking at things, but I mean we're in a world together, so we've got to learn to get along with each other. And for people that are looking at things as a threat, it's of course they're not going to survive. I mean, do you have a different opinion, mate?
My answer is really simple. I mean, why do these centrally planned economies fail? My answer would be because there's no incentive for people to work harder, to do better, to innovate, any of that stuff, because everybody's compensated at the same level. They make everybody, equal on every front that they possibly can, and we're not all equal. And the person who works their ass off deserves to be more successful than the person who doesn't. And I'll give you a great example of socialized medicine. So if you look at universal health care in Canada, it doesn't matter if you have a high income where you pay a lot of taxes, or you don't pay any taxes and you're poor. Everybody is treated exactly the same at the hospital, and everybody is triaged based on the severity of their injury. So you could be in Canada, James, and you could be paying all kinds of tax dollars to the Canadian government, and you blow your knee out and you need an MRI to determine, what exactly the damage is and what the surgical follow-up may be. Right. But you may not get that MRI for 6, 7, 8, 9 months in Canada. So a lot of Canadians will come across the border to upstate New York, for example, and pay their $400 or $500 to get an MRI done. And then they go back home and they give the report to their doctors there, because it's against the law in Canada for a doctor to give you a bill, because it's not fair that you have disposable income for healthcare when some people don't. So instead of you getting the healthcare that you want to pay for extra above and beyond your taxes, you're jumping ahead in line, and that's not fair. And you end up with people dying from this. We just exposed a story the other night ago of a young lad in Canada where they came to the father and they said, we're going to take him off of life support and we're going to harvest his organs and he'll be dead, very shortly after we take him off. There's no hope. He got this Canadian guy had some money, and he put his son on an evac flight to New Orleans. And in less than 30 days, he walked out of the hospital, all the problems solved. But the Canadian government was basically going to euthanize him. So what I'm getting at in social medicine is you're paying taxes, you blow your knee out, and somebody who's a fresh air inspector, meaning they just live off the government, they could end up getting an MRI for something else long before you, even though they pay nothing into the system. And if you look at the Icelandic countries from a healthcare perspective, they have two systems that run in parallel: universal health care that's covered by tax money, and private health care over here for the people who have the disposable income to afford it. That's the way to do it. And to be fair to everybody, it's not fair to say to you, oh, James, you paid a lot in taxes, but you just blew out a knee. This other person, this fresh air inspector, they blew out their back. They're more important than you. So you just have to wait 9 months or a year.
Yeah, exactly. And just, from another direction, just something that I thought of was, I mean, if you look at some of these planned economies, it's only sort of fair at the general level, like the normal civilians. At the
Right.
top, there's so much corruption. Okay, there's so much corruption. So, it's only the people that are the civilians that are rolling with it. Okay, the people that are in control are usually, typically, if you look from a historical point of view, have been corrupt.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Appreciate it, Machete. Thank you for signing up. Well, James, that's it. We're going to close it out here. We got a 45-second message from Donald Trump regarding Tulsi Gabbard. But other than that, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And God bless America.
Tulsi Gabbard was chosen to serve as Director of National Intelligence because she has what it takes to head such a vital role, with a willingness to put service over self. She has the grit to withstand the onslaught of America's adversaries, the strength to stand on the world stage and defend America's interests, the focus that's required to keep America safe, the determination it takes to make sure nothing is missed. She knows success comes from teamwork. Putting America first as Director of National Intelligence.